Hi, everybody. I'm here today with Eoin Fairgrieve at Schloss Roxburghe in Scotland to talk a little bit about the Tweed Salmon Festival that you initiated, Ian. When did you start it, and what was the whole idea behind the festival?
So, Leo, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. The festival was a collective idea by people that work in the gilling and instructing community about appreciating that we do have an issue with salmon fishing, and really appreciating the fact that for us going forward, next generation children are the custodians of the sport, and it's very important that through the platform of the Tweed Salmon Festival is that we are educating next generation anglers and to angling, but also the importance of looking after the river system and looking after the fish going forward.
hmm When you talk about educating young anglers, what's the main focus there?
So the first thing is conclusional, and that is to catch fish, isn't it? That's the most important thing. So from my working life, I've taught a lot of children and introduced a lot of children to fly fishing. And the most important thing is that in the relatively early stages, there's a conclusion of what it can offer.
Mm.
And so that's why the festival worked so well. We had a good number of fish in the loch, and for 2 days, the loch fished outstanding. I've ran that loch for 20 years, and I've never had as many fish put into there. And working on the Loy averages, we had 190 people that were introduced to to fishing for the first time,
Nice.
to fly fishing for the first time. And virtually everybody caught a fish during the course of the 2-day event. It was a great success. And there was a tremendous community element of it. But the overriding feedback, Leo, was how wonderful it was to see children learning, often with their parents or their grandparents, about the various elements of fly fishing. So it would be the fly fishing, the fly casting, the fly dressing, but also Tweed Star with Ben McCallum done a phenomenal job of educating the children about life cycles, about habitat management, and the importance of that. And it was tiered to the age group level. We had Kids Club, which was looking after young anglers that were 5 to about 8, and then 8 through to 16, 8 to 68, was getting taught up at the loch here, all the various aspects of actually fly fishing.
You talked about, the generational spread of fly fishing. Were those mostly people that had someone in the family who had fly fished before? Because I, for example, I had nobody in my family fishing.
Yes.
And I think when that's the case, it's even harder to get in touch with fishing, let alone fly fishing, right?
I absolutely fully agree, Leo. The problem is that, often in our generation, we were introduced by our parents and often our
Mm.
grandparents, but you don't get that so much now. And the wonderful thing about it is what we wanted to generally communicate was that it's an embracive event that everybody is welcome. If you don't know that thing about fly fishing, you're going to be more welcomed.
hmm
We wanted you to come into an environment where nobody felt intimidated by lack of knowledge or lack of experience. And it was a very open, very engaging event that got a lot of people that were non-connected in any shape or form with fly fishing, but had always wanted to experience it. Our hope, obviously, is they take a journey. It starts as a journey where they would want to do it themselves. And in an ideal world, if you were able to get people ladies fishing, if you were able to get children fishing with their parents or grandparents, all that type of mentoring type situation is what we were hoping for. And we had a tremendous amount of people that came through that had never tried it before,
mm
had no inclination to try it before until they'd seen some form of advertising for the event.
Would you also say that access can be sometimes a little tough when it comes, especially to salmon fishing? Because you mentioned, right, a lot of the beats here are private, which on the
Yes.
one hand is positive, right, because
Mhm.
the fishing pressure is kept low. But on the other hand, I would assume a lot of people would feel a little intimidated to even reach out and be like, I want to try salmon fishing.
And I think that is a general misconception. We do see the top beats and we do hear of these amazing rents that are charged and have been charged in the past. But the reality of the situation is salmon is as accessible now as it ever has been. You can get onto association waters
hmm
for 30, 40, 50 pounds a day. You can join an association for 120 pounds for the year for a salmon ticket and 20 pounds for a trout ticket. So I think it is very, very accessible, and the angling community need to educate people how accessible it is.
Mm.
And you don't need any form of massive budget to start fly fishing. You just need to have the will and the interest and in the borders, we're actively trying to create these platforms that you can be taught and welcomed with open arms.
One of the aspects that I often find interesting, right, when I tell people about catch and release, for example, in Germany, the opinions are split in the sense that some people think, catch and release should not be allowed because you catch an animal, you put it back. I often reply to them, if catch and release didn't exist, nowadays fishing would not be sustainable in a way,
Absolutely.
right? And so what I'm trying to say is that I think oftentimes education is so important. So I like to hear that,
Most definitely.
you do that with kids as well, because most of the times, when it comes to eating meat or eating fish, people think, it's just a resource that is there. But then when you learn about those life cycles and the amazing journey that, for example, salmon undertake, right,
Clear.
from the river to the sea and back, I often think that could be something that really appeals to kids as well.
Yes, definitely. And it is an amazing journey. It's a phenomenal journey in natural history. And but salmon is a sport of conservation. We are now in a position where salmon is a sport of conservation, and catch release is fundamentally important going forward, because as soon as a particular fish is taken out the river system to put into the food chain, there is no more benefit that a fish can offer the regeneration of the species.
Yeah.
And that's an economic mass, isn't it, for a survival? You have to make sure that we handle the fish extremely carefully,
Yeah.
and we return the fish extremely carefully. And I think that thankfully now the mindset within the salmon anglers have become very embraces with that. When I started on the river in the late 80s, it was a one-way ticket. And I was part of the problem. You basically killed every fish you
Yeah.
caught. Unseasonable fish, i.e. coloured fish, not kelted fish, coloured fish. And, you justify saying, oh, we can smoke it. But thankfully those days are long gone now. And the angler, his mindset is towards enjoy that fish, but also cautiously return that fish so that we can have some form of sustainability going forward for next generation and generations to come.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, catch and release is sometimes criticized for catching fish for your own pleasure and putting them back. But I, again, often reply saying that fish basically don't have any lobby
Yes.
than fly fishermen, right? Which is a little funny at times. And I think, if the fly fishermen weren't there, nobody would care what happens under the surface, right? Because in a river might look healthy to someone who just looks at it, it's like, oh, it's nice and fast flowing or whatever. But underneath, there could be no fish and you don't even realize.
Right. That's the thing. When it comes to farming practices, if you've seen an animal distress above the water or in the field, you would react to it straight away. And under the water, you can't see that practice. That's right. It's a very, very valid point. What I would say in catch and release is wonderful in salmon fishing. It's an absolute necessity. From the trout fishing point of view, which is a sustainable food source, is the festival was an excellent example of this. There was a couple of instances where we took a fish for food, and we showed not just children, but people that were visiting the show, what a sustainable food alternative is to wild Atlantic salmon. And in that instance there, because the Scandinavian fire pit was a huge success, is we cooked fish on the grill at the Scandinavian fire pit. People tried that, and they could see that, there's a wonderful connection for a sustainable fish, not a fish like salmon that we have to return, to enjoy the pleasure of playing a fish, cooking a fish, playing a fish, and ultimately eating a fish.
I agree. And I also think,
your food.
to the point of education, it also adds to that, because children then understand, that was an animal that died, but you value it and you eat it and you enjoy it with friends, for example, which I think can be a very important part of the whole thing as well, if you do it, like you're saying, with a sustainable species.
That's exactly right. And the caveat is that it has to be a sustainable species. And, when we had at the festival, one of the highlights of many highlights over the course of the weekend was the fire pit. And the fire pit was wonderfully looked after by Sarah Reinhold from representing Patagonia. And the concept of sitting and just enjoying that time by a waterway with the fire going. Sarah done a tremendous demonstration. She made Irish coffee. She made campsite coffee. She made s'mores for the kids. And people sitting there and just enjoying the river for the river's sake, or the loch for the loch's sake, I think is a part of, we'll definitely develop that culture, because fishing is about switching off. When you are fly fishing, there's a bit of string on a stick, and there's some form of artificial fly. It's purely beautiful, isn't it? And but also just enjoying the environment and the community as much as anything.
I agree. I think that's a big aspect nowadays, apart from catching a fish. Everybody wants to catch a fish, right?
Yeah.
No doubt. But I totally agree with you that I think, the communal aspect, and also the aspect of, maybe catching a fish together, in the sense that,
That's right.
two friends go out together, only one
That's right.
casts to a fish and you catch it. And honestly, I still feel great if,
Yeah.
it happens then, and not on my line, but on someone else's, because like you're saying, I think the whole scenario is what makes fly fishing so beautiful. And it's
Most
something that also spans across the world, from my experience, right? The same in the US, in the UK, in Europe. No matter where you go, if you're a fly fisherman or fly fisherwoman, you have this instant understanding in a way, because you share, at least to some degree, an outlook on life, I feel.
And a conversation starter,
Yeah.
isn't it? We met an hour ago,
Yeah.
and the first conversation we had was the various species in this river that led on to Iceland, to other places around the world. And that's the wonderful thing, the communication that angling offers.
Yeah.
You come under an umbrella, you're part of the club, if you like.
Yeah.
And be able to, and it doesn't matter what level you are at
Yeah.
that particular in your angling journey, is that you can have a good solid conversation and exchange experiences and build friendships.
Yeah.
Because fly fishing is, by definitions, you're fishing generally yourself, but during the course of the day or the course of your session, but you have community when you get together at lunchtime, or you get community at night time,
Right.
or you get to community in like a festival experience,
Yeah.
where you come under the common denominator of learning to fish,
Yeah.
or to fly fish, or to improve your fishing skills. And so it's multi-leveled, but it has the community is, and I'm proud to be part of that community. It's such a major part of it.
It sounds great. I'm already looking forward to the next edition next year, and hope to be part of it.
We look forward to seeing you, Leo. Thank you
Thanks,
very much
Ian.
indeed.